And then the good news is it doesn't really matter how many DePIN L1s there are, because at the end of the day, there should be more than one. There should be peaks, there should be Solanas. And I think the more networks that are here to support DePIN projects, I think the more solidified DePIN becomes as a whole. And that's really the most important thing.
If you like the Lightspeed podcast, then you need to subscribe to the Lightspeed newsletter, written by a team including yours truly and delivered to your email inbox daily. Lightspeed is your essential daily briefing on all things Solana. Exclusive news, deep analysis, and the latest trends delivered in a way that's digestible and, I think, sometimes kind of funny. Stay ahead of the curve with the same insights that guide readers from Brevin Howard, Gemini, Jito, CME Group, Solana Labs, and Foundation, and many more. The link to sign up can be found in today's show notes or if you go to blockworks.co. Subscribe to the Lightspeed newsletter today. This episode is sponsored by Sei, the parallel execution EVM-compatible Layer 1 with sub-second finality. Incentives for users are coming to Sei this month from teams like DragonSwap. Start farming on Sei today by visiting dragonswap.app. We'll hear more from Sei later in the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Lightspeed. Today we're joined by Carey from Borderless Capital, which just raised a $100 million DePIN fund that we're really excited to be getting into today. Sean was formerly a co-founder of Helium, was a system architect at Giphy, among other things, and now investing in DePIN. Sean, thank you so much for coming on Lightspeed.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. Really,
the camera looks great, by the way. It's auto-focused. We had some camera questions before this. And are you a Biggie fan? I'm also...
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a Biggie fan. I'm a Tupac fan. I have a Tupac version of it too. It's actually a mosaic. So if you look really closely at it, these are all like three-dimensional. They're pieces of wood that are carved to actually make a mosaic of Biggie. And but I have the Tupac version of it over here on the left too. I try to rotate them, but I didn't have time today. So today's Tupac's day, but he doesn't get it.
Oh, sad. Yeah, it's a striking background to have. You know, New York based, so had to call out the Biggie mosaic in the background.
But, yeah, no, I'm in Brooklyn all the time, so I love. Every time I'm in Bedford-Stuyvesant, I sing some Biggie in my head. So
yeah,
but I was literally there like a week ago in Bushwick and Bedford-Stuyvesant. Love it there.
So are you like an old head hip hop fan, or are you into the new stuff as well?
Well, I'm old, so so definitely an old head. I think I cut my teeth with hip hop with NWA and Ice Cube and Dr. Dre in that era. I was born in 1979. Don't judge me, everybody. But I do listen to a lot of the more modern hip hop as well. So, like if I'm thinking about somebody right now, like Lil Baby would come up. Schoolboy Q I'm a huge fan of. One of my very close friends, rest in peace, Andy Gross. He's from the Bay Area. Well, he lived in the Bay Area for a long time. He turned me on to Schoolboy Q. So definitely, I definitely keep track of the more modern hip hop, but definitely love the old stuff.
Yeah, I'm quite a few years younger than you, and so
no way,
never
no.
if you'll believe it. But yeah, I grew up more on like Kanye, Kendrick, and I always wanted to get into like Biggie and Tupac, but I think my brain is just too shaped by like the modern way that instrumentals work and the way everything's produced. So haven't been able to get into it. I feel like it's been a little bit of a rap dry spell recently, though. There was the Kendrick and Drake beef, and that was interesting, but otherwise there hasn't been a lot that's really impressed me in the past year or two.
No, definitely. And Kendrick Lamar is a legend. So
yeah,
I definitely I still enjoy listening to Kendrick almost every day. I probably play a Kendrick Lamar track. And also J. Cole. I do live in I'm from Boston, but I do live in North Carolina on the Outer Banks. And so I spend a lot of time hearing about J. Cole, so I listen to his music. And
oh yeah, he's great.
I've heard interesting things about him, like he's in Africa playing basketball or something now. So
he played semi-pro basketball.
Yeah. So
it's cool stuff. I'm getting us way off topic already, but Sean, you came on to chat a little bit about Borderless's new DePIN fund. And I guess the place I want to begin is there are a lot of crypto funds out there, but this is one of the larger ones I've seen that's dedicated to a specific sector like this. Like, a specific DePIN fund as opposed to just a general $100 million crypto fund. So I just want to ask why raise a fund specifically dedicated to DePIN rather than a general crypto fund that invests in DePIN alongside infrastructure, other genres?
Yeah, it's a good question, and my answer might be different than my partner's answers. But I'll tell you my answer on this. Right, is DePIN is a tangible thing. It's I can look at the economics of different types of DeFi systems and applications, and I could try to speculate how they work or how people could use them. But when I look at DePIN, before it was DePIN, it just maybe they could be IoT devices or other things. There's a tangible need for many of these projects, and I look at that like there's a means to an end, and there's a way for people to be able to scale massively these different projects that are out there. If you look at Helium, for instance, when I was part of Helium, when I co-founded Helium, one of the biggest questions that roamed around in our minds was, how are we going to get people to put these devices in their homes? How are we going to incentivize them? And this is back when Bitcoin was, the price was the only thing. It was before Ethereum. Helium's been around for a long time, and we thought even as going as far as like paying for somebody's internet connectivity, like we'll pay for your cable bill or something like that. And years after I left the company, the idea that, and we talked about it quite early about, can it be a blockchain? But it's just, from a technical perspective, it would have been such a huge challenge back then, especially while building a hardware company. We talked about it a little bit and really kind of passed on it back then. But, as they wrote the yellow paper and started to build that technology, they were able to grow to 1 million devices. And if you think about that as, in less than 2 years, something being able to deploy 1 million devices around the world is, there's probably some type of Guinness record for that. And if you think about, another business trying to be able to do that without, utilizing some type of crypto or incentivization program, I honestly don't even know what exists that could do that. And there have been companies that have tried incentive structures in the past, but didn't use DeFi and blockchain. And they could never grow to that many devices. And I'm not saying there aren't that many devices, but I can't think of anything. So when you go back to DePIN as a whole, why are we only investing in DePIN? And for me, it's technology that I understand. It's technology that I can look at and talk about, and there's also a tangible thing for the consumer to understand. And that's why, for me, I think in DeFi, DePIN is the holy grail, because the consumer actually knows what the end result is of a DePIN, where some projects, they don't even know what it does. They just see the the fluctuation and the crypto going up and down, and they essentially will trade on it. It's And so for me, if you look at project, there's a bunch of projects out there. There's Helium. There's projects like Geode, where GeodeNet is, they're essentially one of the world's largest RTK, precision GPS networks, right? And if you look at that, they have a real purpose and a real design behind the technology. That technology actually enables other businesses, and it creates a great cycle of users being able to consume those technologies and applications, and being able to create real value in the token itself, but also creating real value in a business and for society. That is a huge thing, and that's one of the things I love about DePIN. Just to be a little more long-winded, because I will give you a bunch of long-winded answers, and there are companies coming that are still going to continue doing this. If you look at Wingbits, Wingbits is essentially, if you think about Flight Radar 24, you ever use that app when you travel, Jack?
I don't know.
So Flight Radar allows you to like go on and like tap on an airplane. Say you're picking up your girlfriend at the airport or something, and you can track the trajectory of the flight, where it's going, if it's circling, if there's bad weather. All of that data is given to Flight Radar by hobbyists. They get like a free premium membership to Flight Radar for it. Wingbits is a system that actually incentivizes users to have these ADSB systems and plug them in and operate them, and they get rewarded for it. Now, I can only imagine once the actual token deploys and users, and they're already deploying it, the incentive for people to move away from these things that don't give them anything, to the structure of you're going to earn a token, the token has value. That's a huge thing. It's going to be a monumental change for that industry. And that's really how I look at it, is all of the DePINs, and not every DePIN is created equal, but all of the DePINs that I think are interesting are going to do something that are going to change the way that we operate in society. And that's the world's longest answer for why I like DePIN.
No, that's a good sort of opening statement of, why do decentralized physical infrastructure, right? I think something I keep asking for in recent months is just explain like why you're building anything you're building. Because I think in crypto there can be this insularity where it's like beyond, it's like post explanation crypto, where everyone just assumes that everyone knows why things work or why you should be building a new perp stacks or whatever. But I think constantly explaining what you're doing and what the kind of end goal is actually really necessary and helpful. So that's the why DePIN side. I also wanted to get your take sort of just from the, dollars and cents running a venture capital business side. One thing that recently I've been learning a lot about is just the centrality of tokens to crypto VC. Because in the VC world, a lot of these crypto companies have a low chance of IPOing unless you're investing in like a Coinbase or a Bitcoin mining firm. It's been very rare that equity in crypto companies has produced returns so far. But if you're a VC, your token allocation can produce a return that you can report to LPs and show good returns on your fund. Now, this has been talked about a lot because lots of different projects are releasing tokens. And as I was prepping for this episode, I was thinking like a lot of crypto projects are criticized because they don't need tokens. It's like we're a project building, say, a decentralized exchange, and we released a token that's used for governance, but like not really. It's more just so people can sort of farm the airdrop and founders and VCs see a return that way. But in DePIN, there's actually like the token is the whole ball game. As you said, it's about incentivizing and rewarding people for running these systems. And you don't really have DePIN without a token. So this is kind of a long question, but I guess what I'm getting at is from a venture capital perspective, just from a driving returns for investors perspective, is the centrality of tokens, like, does that make DePIN attractive to your LPs and just the ability to deliver a return on these DePIN businesses?
So I don't necessarily, and we'll preface this all with I'm a technology guy that is a partner venture capitalist, right? So I don't have an MBA. I build my conviction in different ways. So my answer again is going to be very different than others. Do I think an LP would care? I'm an LP in a bunch of things. I don't really care like too much about if it's a token or if it's an equity. I care about the multiplier, right? Like how much money am I making off something as an LP, right? Just like anybody would. Just like if you were, using Goldman Sachs and you were on some index or something, you want to know how that index is performing. The great thing about token investment is, one is it's a way to operate the ecosystem, right? Alvaro, who's not here today, he has a great, I believe he was one of the people that coined this as Web 2.5, right? Is you have people can pay in US dollars, they convert into token. Those tokens are used to operate the DePIN network. And a lot of those tokens are burned as they're operated, and it creates downward a downward pressure mechanism to make the token more scarce. It creates value. It makes it tradable, right? These are great mechanisms for DePIN projects, and the main reason why is because operating that and rewarding people based on that it creates a simplicity around it, and you don't have to worry or think about who you're going to ship these dollars to at the end of the month. And if you look at there's a project that I've invested in recently. It's called Mawari. And they're they're already created. It's basically an extended reality content delivery network. And it's probably one of the most phenomenal pieces of engineering I've seen in a long time. And they've greatly reduced the bandwidth and the other things needed to do extended reality from the edge. And the thing about it is you have to be on the edge. So if you're Mawari, right, as a business, you would have to go raise $100 million in capital to essentially go out and put edge nodes around the whole world, and then go, okay, everybody, let's go ahead and turn Mawari on and hope people use it, right? With this model and the model that is really being built around DePIN, is Mawari can incentivize users to deploy these nodes, and they can deploy those nodes around the world. And as traffic and as they prove that they're viable nodes and viable video cards in those nodes, they're rewarded for that. And so if you look at it, as Mawari doesn't have to spend 40 or 50 or $100 million and potentially fail. They can build a network. They can share the wealth with other people based on what's coming in. And they can try to prove that they're building what I believe is going to be an extremely successful product. Now, the intellectual property comes into play as well. You don't tokenize intellectual property, right? And they have some insanely cool intellectual property. They have patents and some of these I don't want to talk to. I know a whole bunch about it, but I don't want to blow their spot up and talk about their intellectual property. But some of this stuff is so cool. You have to have a business that holds and protects that intellectual property. And that's where, having the equity and the token really comes into play and is a successful mechanism, because they're both extremely valuable. Mawari's codec is an extremely valuable thing. The token is needed, to be able to operate the network and incentivize those users who are running those nodes. And the reason why it's needed is because, Mawari doesn't have $50 to $100 million to prove their concept, just like Helium didn't. And the thing is the end result, we all hope, is a successful system and a successful network. So I think I partly answered that question. So you might want to ask me parts of it again, because I don't know if I 100% answered everything you were asking.
Well, so let me put it a different way. I guess, as a VC, part of your job is like going out and investing in startups, and then part of it is also sales, almost like getting LPs to invest in your fund. And DePIN, notably, is kind of hard to explain sometimes. Like I think you invested in Sourceful. If I saw that on Twitter, yeah. So I remember talking with Sourceful, and it just took me like 30 minutes of this conversation to wrap my mind around what a virtual power plant is. And it can get really complicated when you try to get into the nitty gritty of what DePINs do. So as you were selling to LPs, what were the selling points? What were the things that tended to be successful in terms of getting someone to want to LP in this fund?
Want to become an LP. And really what I try to convey personally is, well, one is they're going to get returns, right? The financial returns are always important to LPs. The other thing is what is the product doing? And so you said it took you a half an hour to understand Sourceful. I'm going to help you understand Sourceful in 60 seconds. So there are battery packs all around the world, right? That are connected to solar panels. right? You've probably driven by them. You've seen them, people's roofs. There's fields in North Carolina just full of panels. All of that power is off grid. So there's no, in a lot of cases, in most cases, there is no centralized or decentralized system that understands how much power is being stored in these banks and how much of it is being consumed and how much of it's just being completely wasted, right? So like you could have 100 kilowatts of power, right? But you could produce that power twice a day, but you're only using 30 kilowatts of that power. 70% of your power is just going in the trash that you have there. Imagine a world where you take a small device, sourceful device, you can plug that in, and the first thing it starts to do is it starts to help a decentralized system understand how much power is off grid. And it helps businesses, institutions, and power companies understand how much is being stored in batteries around the world. So even before you get to the whole virtual power plant side of things, right? Just imagine a world where these electric companies can actually understand how much of this power is out there, and how much they would pay for that power is another great aspect, right? It's like, or not just paying for the power, but how much would an electric company pay just to have access to understand how much of that power is off grid? This is where Frederick and the rest of the Sourceful team are really, really smart, right? They want to help people understand the power first and how much of it is there. And then they want to create an off-grid system, or, what did you call it? A virtual power plant, where maybe in the future you can trade that power to other people. But the first step is actually understanding it. And I think my 60 seconds is up. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it might have been a little over 60 seconds, Sean, but
but all right, so 90 seconds.
Yeah, but so is the idea that like kind of when pitching to LPs, it's like outline what the problem is in the traditional way that infrastructure works, and then DePIN kind of solves those inefficiencies. That tends to be the most compelling case.
Absolutely, and if you think about the story of a DePIN, for me, it's like you have to be able to convey what a DePIN is, and you have to convey that to the LPs. Most LPs, they're savvy people. They were engineers in their lives, or they were founders and things like that. And if you can convey, the spirit of the foundation and the business that is being built, and you can show them why you think that is an important to society and an important business, it's almost a no-brainer, right? And part of it is, and I won't say any of the business names here, but we've had LPs join that were maybe investors in other projects, right? And one of the reasons why they joined us as an LP is because I spent the time to explain, an investment to them. Sometimes they don't fully understand a potential investment, and when you take that time and you explain that and you help them understand your conviction behind a project, that opens a door for them to be more apt to investing in your fund as an LP. And we're very we're very big at that at Borderless. We collaborate with a lot of different venture capital firms, but also very large investors in private equity firms and things like that. And really, what I like to do is say we go to lead a round and we're talking to other potential investors, I really like to spend that time and make other investors feel comfortable in how I'm working. Many of those people end up becoming LPs in the business. The same thing with, Solana Foundation is investing us, right? They know, why is that good for Solana Foundation? Well, one is they know that we're avid supporters of Solana. We're avid supporters of Peak. We're avid supporters of IoTex. And even if they weren't LPs, we would still be avid supporters of those projects. Even before they became LPs, we were still avid supporters of those projects. And those are the main things, right? And I think as part of it is, this even goes back to like Solana Foundation, Solana Ventures. There are times when we will communicate about projects, or they'll talk to us about a project, or we'll help them understand something that we know about a project. that collaboration, kind of in the community really helps things. And that's really what I think helps build, for me at least, a great base of LPs, like for a lot of your early LPs. And then from there, I think targeting the LPs that want to see tangibility, they're going to get this the most, right? So for me as an investor, Jack, I don't really, I like you say, I take my Borderless hat off because I'm an LP and an investor in a bunch of other things, right? I'm not going to go invest in like somebody's, farming project because I don't know anything about farming. What I'm going to invest in are things that I understand, or things that I think I understand, or things that I think that might be intelligent investments because they change something in a way that it can break up, society, or shock society in a way. So we're not just all living by the standard and the norm, where like the IBMs and the Googles and they all get everything. They're the big companies, and we're all picking their scraps, right? I like to see these companies, and for me, I have to understand it, and I build that conviction of understanding it. And as an LP, I look at the portfolios, of the venture capital firms that I'm invested in. And if I don't like the way that they invested the first time, when they come around the next time, I may not actually invest, on the next fund. And the thing is for me personally, is I want to have that with every LP at Borderless. I want to have that relationship where they know they can call myself, they can call Alvaro, they can call David, they can call a rule anytime, and we're going to be able to answer questions, concerns, and even help them understand the investments. But first and foremost, we want them to understand our investments before we make them. So even when it comes to deal flow, when we're presenting to potential LPs, we want them to see what's in our upcoming deal flow and why we think those are great projects.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I hope that another long-winded one.
No, that makes sense. I'm interested as well, just in seeing how this iteration of the Borderless DePIN fund plays out, because I think it's maybe more and more of an emerging trend that crypto VCs aren't just crypto VCs as much as they're going into specific sectors. So I guess like Sixth Man does consumer apps. I'm struggling to think of other ones off the top of my head, but sort of it was a new trend to just have a crypto VC as opposed to like a tech VC. And sort of as crypto is more and more built out, I think you'll see more like we're a DePIN fund, we're a real world asset fund, whatever. So it'll be interesting to follow that along. But as I mentioned as well, Borderless isn't new to this. So in 2021, Borderless raised two other funds. Now, to my understanding, you joined sort of in January of this year. So
Yeah.
You weren't around for those funds, but
No, but I know them very well.
The Sei network brought parallel execution to the EVM with their V2 update this past spring. Sub-second finality and massive throughput are now available to EVM developers everywhere on Sei's high-performance Layer 1. Incentives for users are coming to Sei this month from teams like DragonSwap. Start farming on Sei today by visiting dragonswap.app. That's dragonswap.app. Thanks again to Sei for sponsoring today's episode. Yeah, and you've been around DePIN obviously since the very early years. Taking that longer term historical approach, I wanted to ask, like, how many DePIN businesses do you think are successful, sustainable businesses today? Like, I think one that comes to mind is Helium, but how many would you put in that Helium category right now, September 2024?
So it's interesting. I have a very forward-looking view because I'm actively investing in DePINs, right? And so how many do I think are going to be successful? I would say that I'm actively following somewhere between 50 and 100 projects right now. We're invested in. Just in 24 alone, maybe we're somewhere near like 10 of these projects or something. How many are going to be successful? I think there'll be a fairly high ratio. I think it would be dumb. I wouldn't say dumb. It would be dumb of me to predict how many will be successful. But I think if they play their cards right, there will be a very very good chance of a great success rate. Right. I want all of them to be successful, and the main reason why is again is they're trying to fill in and pull from the bottom line of huge businesses. Right. That's one of the for me the core tenets of DePIN is it doesn't take some massive telco company to deploy a mobile phone and mobile phone network anymore. Maybe they have to. You're not going to deploy Helium Mobile up and down the highways for a long time, but 80% of the time I'm on Wi-Fi calling anyway, or so there are many applications that are going to be like that. So applications that I think are going to own the industry. I think GeoNet is going to own the world of RTK, in precise positioning. I think Wingbits is, they're still very young, but I think that Wingbits as a company, they're going to own flight data, in the future, and I think we're still in a very early stage of this stuff. I think Helium is obviously going to own the mobile world. I think Helium is going to own the IoT world, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. What I think is going to change is that people are not just people, but businesses are going to start to have to change the way that they think and operate. And I think we're going to hit a critical point in the future of where, and I think we've already started to hit it in some places, and they will have to start using these new types of services because people aren't going to want to change this. And it's time for the users and the builders out there to be incentivized for what they're doing and just not to give all this shit away for free. And like they should get something for it. And, frankly, I can't imagine a world where 10 years from now, where human beings are going to be, helping bootstrap businesses, and it's going to be in DePIN is going to be one of the core foundations of it. And going back is, if you look at Blockjoy, I founded a company called Blockjoy, blockjoy.com, and we created a fairly elaborate system for deploying L1s and blockchain applications, and we're able to do it much cheaper than anybody else. And we have so much intellectual property there. And we're not a tokenized application, right? But Borderless saw what we were doing years ago. And this is how why I love, I'm part of Borderless now. Why I love Borderless is, they saw what we were working on several years ago, and they were instantly like, well, we know you're not a crypto business, but, this is something that we're very interested in. And they're just, and they look forward at that, at these types of these types of systems. And I've always loved the idea that Borderless, they break their focus into areas, and this allows people like me to join somewhere like Borderless, and I don't have an Excel spreadsheet where I'm crunching concepts. We're getting our hands dirty, and we're really spending the time to build our conviction behind the projects. And for us, I hope all of our everything that we invest in our whole portfolio, I want it to be successful, and not just for everybody to get rich. I think the most important thing to hear is that we're actually doing things that that are going to define a way of working in the future. And that's one of the reasons why I became a VC. It was an item that 2011 I said to myself. After I worked for a company that got destroyed by an investor, and I said I'm going to be a VC one day, so I can try to undo the wrong of that investor, because it was the smartest group of engineers. Actually, the guy I mentioned earlier, Andy Gross, he was created the first open source version of Amazon's Dynamo technology, and that company got ruined by an investor, and that's when I knew I was going to be an investor in the future, because one of the things you can ask about any portfolio company that we have that I've invested in at Borderless is I will spend an endless amount of time with them, as much as I have, to make sure they're successful. It's not just about making introductions for me. I'll work on anything they want. I'll go and code if they need me to for a couple days, and that's really the main thing is building that conviction, and and I really care about the projects. And I know I gave you a non-answer, and it's mainly because I don't want to estimate, who's going to fail, because people are going to fail. That's just life, right? It's like when you play in the NFL and you play a game of football, like somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. I'm not going to bet on it though, because I want to see them all succeed.
Mm-hmm. So then maybe like a related question. You mentioned like around 50 projects you invested in or something like that.
Well, no, 50 projects I'm looking at. I would say we've invested in, I don't remember the exact number, but say somewhere around 10.
Okay. So, that means there's some investments you're taking, some you're passing on. So what kinds of infrastructure do you think actually make sense for DePIN, and what sorts of things do you think are good enough as centralized infrastructure maybe? Or what shouldn't get the DePIN treatment?
Yeah, I think that is one of the things, is the term DePIN can get overused now, right? And one of the things that people have to really discern is what is a DePIN and what is not, right? And there are methods of trying to measure this that people are going with. We don't have a huge internal mechanism for how we measure what's a DePIN and what's not. But the real thing is it has to be physical, right? It has to be infrastructure. But it doesn't have to be a specific device or a specific technology. Maybe that will change in the future, where DePIN will become a more narrow category. But for now, it's like, is it decentralized? Is it some type of infrastructure? Does it serve a purpose to the end user? And there are a bunch of different applications that fall under that. And also part of it is, this is something that we've coined at Borderless, is there are two different types of DePIN. There's the bespoke DePIN, right? So that a bespoke DePIN is going to be like the Hive Mapper device, the Helium routers, things like that. And then there are the commodity DePINs. And these could be applications that run on a phone that do other things. So Uprock is a great example of that. And so imagine you can install Uprock on an Android or a Mac. You can install it on an iPhone. And their users can script or program things that they want somewhere else. And then they could say, I want to understand this data. I want to crawl this data on Amazon. We'll use Amazon, for example, because you can't just crawl. You can't start a server on EC2 and then go crawl Amazon's marketplace. It will hit you with the ban hammer so fast, right? But there are people that want to understand do competitive analysis, just like you would in the 80s when I was growing up, right? People would go in stores and look at pricing, right? How do you do that now? Well, you crawl the internet. And you try to create competitive, some type of mechanism to be competitive with Amazon. So you can't just crawl Amazon from a commercial IP address. They'll block you. Imagine if you had access to 1 million telephones, 700,000 telephones, and you could say, check these 4 million products, and I want you to check them from England, I want you to check them from California, and I want you to check them from Sri Lanka. And imagine Uprock can dispatch that. They can crawl it. They can bring that data back and put it all together for you. And it's not going to get blocked by Amazon because it's coming from a consumer's telephone. Things like that, I think, are great commodity DePIN projects. And there are other commodity DePIN projects.
If I could get in there, like, I'm curious how that. This is minor, but I'm curious how that relates to like the definition of DePIN you gave earlier. Because if it's sort of web crawling with phones, isn't that more digital or like virtual infrastructure than it is physical?
So no, it's a physical infrastructure because the phone is the infrastructure itself. Mm-hmm. And so the idea here is you don't need to have a complex device to be a DePIN, and that's why we call it a commodity DePIN. And so you have the decentralized factor, you have the actual infrastructure, which is the phone. And then you have the token that incentivizes the users to run the app on their phone. And then it's not, and also to circle back to that, it's not just about crawling, right? It could do anything. It could be collecting data for AI, for instance, right? But the whole idea is you need devices all around the world to understand information around the world. You can't just have you can't have a server in San Francisco that collects all the world's data, and or like a cluster of servers there, because it won't work. And the idea, though, is a user adds this application, allows you to do arbitrary things that are secure and safe. And then they are rewarded in return for that. The infrastructure is the telephone, the program, just like even like a Helium hotspot has software on it, right? But the idea here is the program is ad hoc, so it can do. There are certain functions of those programs that the Uprock network can use, and the commodity part of that DePIN is the telephone.
So, what's an example of decentralized infrastructure that's not DePIN then?
So a decentralized infrastructure that is not, you know what, that's a good question. I'd have to, I'm almost willing to say, is it would have to, like, so for instance, if you were running like, and maybe I'm wrong, so I'm probably gonna get some backlash from somebody for this, but if you started a company and you're like, I'm a DePIN, and it was just basically like a bunch of, and you were just starting up Amazon nodes and they were running, like, or to decentralize infrastructure, something that's not a DePIN. It could be for running like RPCs for L1 blockchains, for instance. But even some of that stuff, it's such a gray line right now, because no one's really defined it. I would almost be tempted to say, like, even decentralized RPC infrastructure could maybe be a DePIN.
Well, is the blockchain a DePIN if it's like a decentralized group of validators that or miners that?
So that's the thing, is like, for instance, Blockjoy, right? Like, Blockjoy maybe could be a DePIN if it tokenized, right? And so they could go through the whole, they could do a node sale, they could do all kinds of things like that, and could potentially be a DePIN. Some people might beg to differ. Abhay Kumar from the Helium Foundation might text me if he sees this, and he'll be like, "That's not a DePIN," But the thing is right now it's kind of it's a lot of it is up in the air of what is DePIN and what's not. And I think over time, what will happen is it will start to get more narrow, like I said earlier, and people will be like, it has to have a utility, right? But then you're like, oh well, an RPC is a utility. And so DePIN could become one of those words like IoT, right? Like IoT is a loaded term. DePIN is a loaded term. Maybe a couple of years from now, it won't even be called DePIN for all we know. But right now, our fund is DePIN, right? And but I think I guess the long story short is it's like there's no one's right and no one's wrong when it comes to DePIN. And I think if you just take the definition of it and you try to adhere to it, decentralized physical infrastructure, right? And you try to adhere to those concepts. And I'm not saying go run a bunch of bots on EC2 and you're a DePIN, but if you're really thinking about something, I don't think it has to be a custom device. It could be a server that runs a piece of software and still be a DePIN.
Yeah. Don't come at Sean in the comments. I know crypto people enjoy semantic arguments from time to time, but
oh, wait, is this live? I didn't know this was live.
No, it's not. It's not.
Oh, okay.
People in the YouTube comments will, let you know how they feel.
That's okay. You can delete them. I won't. I never read them anyway.
Good. So, I know, Sean, you're a bit more on like the engineering side than the tokenomics side, but I do want to get a little bit into that because I think it's an interesting kind of other half of the equation. Like once you've built the physical infrastructure, as you said, the token sort of bootstraps and incentivizes the network to gain users. So just to start off at a basic level, why do DePIN networks need crypto? Like, why couldn't you just build out decentralized physical infrastructure that pays out in fiat and people don't have to worry about crypto wallets and the kind of friction associated with that? You could just pay straight to their bank account. What's the benefit of crypto for DePIN?
So if Jack Kubinek Incorporated sent me $350, you would have to then file a 1099, right? And now what if my cousin in Portugal, you paid him $400? What are you going to send him for a tax form? So that's one thing, right? Is it tokenizing things makes it simpler.
Yeah.
And then using decentralized or centralized exchanges to handle that makes it a lot easier. And the other thing is telling somebody you're going to pay them. What if you can't pay them, but people are willing to bank on a token? What if somebody believes in the project, right? And they said, you know what, I really like this project. I will fire up this, or I have a 4090 TX in my Call of Duty laptop, or not laptop, but like my Call of Duty desktop, and I'm willing to let people use this 4090 TX, 4090 Ti. I'm an idiot, and I'm allowed, for the 22 hours a day I'm not playing Call of Duty. Why can't somebody else use that GPU? And I'll get tokens for it. And if it's successful and people actually, start to consume these services, those tokens create value because, whatever the application is uses some type of economic, mechanism to create the value and create disinflation, on those tokens. It becomes somebody could call it gambling. I don't really call it gambling, but it's almost like you're being optimistic about a project. And so that means that my business, I don't have to, I don't have to go ask VCs for, $20 million to build a bunch of hardware and then deploy it. Instead, I might be able to create a token and bootstrap the business that way. Also, still get money from VCs to build the initial batch of devices, but then be able to potentially continue to grow that business with less and less help, and it becomes an ecosystem more than it does just a system that's owned by VCs. But I think the big thing is you can't just it would be so hard to build something to reward somebody in fiat. Maybe I'm wrong about this one. Maybe somebody will call me out for this in the comments too. But I can't imagine, if you want something, that's going to be used around the world, that you're going to be able to reward all of these people legally based on some system that you have. And that's really the barrier that it breaks down. Once you get past that barrier, it really becomes about those people are taking a bet on you. They're going, you know what? I think this is a really good idea. So I'm going to buy this device because I think it, one is I like it. And, because I think it's a two-factor thing, right? It's like, one, do you like the idea? Yes. Two, maybe you'll make some money off of it. And then if you can check both of those boxes, I mean, why the hell not do it? People drink Starbucks 3 times a day, 2 times a day, right? That's what is that, like $7,000 a year or something like that, just for coffee? I bet there's you cut back, drink 3 less coffees a week. You could probably pay for half the DePIN devices out there, or make it at home. And that's how I look at it. Is part of it is you have to, even people that are personally jumping into DePIN, don't just do it for money. Do it because you like it. Do it because you think the project is actually worthwhile, and help build that conviction. Just like I build my conviction when I look at companies, I have to like the team. I have to like the product. I have to like the engineers. It's not just about, will it make money? And I think if all of that aligns and does well, I think there's some measurement of success there. But I also think it's just, in this day and age, it's going to be harder and harder for people out there to build companies with lofty ideas and get the financing they need to make that stuff work. And that's where tokens come into place, because there's a hell of a lot of people out there willing to bet on this stuff. Long answer.
I think that's an interesting point to get into, though, because especially with helium, this has sort of always been a thing as far as the question of how much should the price action matter. Because the HNT, like native helium token, the price action for its entire lifetime has been kind of brutal. It had a big run up in 2021. It still hasn't come close to recapturing those highs. It's doing a little better the past couple of months, but in general, it's been hard to balance the supply and the demand, I guess, with helium. You're saying, don't just buy these tokens because you think the price is going to go up. Also buy in because you want to contribute to the DePIN network. So decentralizing whatever the infrastructure is. So if you're a retail investor in DePIN, is that sort of the way you would encourage people to think about it? Is you're maybe contributing to a Kickstarter campaign, and then in a certain version of the future, it could have a lot of upside, but you can't necessarily expect that that's going to be the case. You could also lose that money, but you'd be contributing to this cause that you care about, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. I think it really depends on the size of the project. I think if we're looking at young projects or projects that are, well, one is a retail investor, they're not going to touch a lot of this, right? So it's not, everybody at the same, well, I'll go back to that. The same time, right, is like, if you look at a mature company like Helium, on the last run up, and, I think it ran up to like 50 something or $60. I don't even remember now. Was it rampant speculation of people just out there on buying frenzies, right? Is if you look at every crypto, every token, it was a bloodbath for everybody. I remember when Solana went down to like $12, and now it's back up to like 150 or something, right? And but it was it was a total bloodbath after everyone did that, and after FTX, and I think what's happening is we're going to go through. And again, this is my pure speculation, right? It's like, I put no rubber stamp on any of this. We're going to go through cycles of this because the stuff that we're investing in and the technology that, that we call crypto, DeFi, DePIN, this stuff, is extremely volatile at some level. But as things mature, as Bitcoin became an ETF, as Ethereum, as Solana, or whoever, the things will stabilize over time. The price actions are not going to be crazy. So you're not going to go from like buying a 50-cent token. It's going to be $50 in a week. And people will be able to have more predictable curves in usage and understanding. I think in the early phases, and not looking at yourself as a retail investor, but in the early phases of a project like I'm Jack, and I want to maybe buy not just buy the token, but I maybe want to buy a DePIN device or participate in a node sale. You need to have conviction on what that is, and you need to also want to think that it could potentially make money. And if you don't, why participate is my point, right? Is like, why just do it because you think you think you think it might make money because your cousin's sister told you or something, right? And like I think any savvy retail investor is going to tell you, they're going to go and they're going to read these sheets on their investments, right? They're going to understand what they're investing in. They're going to want to understand. And if they don't understand it, they go to somebody else that might understand it, a friend of theirs, or maybe their sister's uncle, and somebody else will explain it, and maybe they can build conviction. But I think just like as a venture capitalist, it's like, it's all about conviction-based investment. It's like nobody's going to make an accurate decision 100% of the time on an investment. But you sure as hell should want to make a good investment. And if you're not convinced that it could be a good investment, why even waste your time or even the foundation or the business's time in putting hope behind them? And that's how I look at it.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I think, one of the cool things that DePIN and I guess Solana as well, when I think about things like the Seeker can do, is break into industries that are very dominated by incumbents with tokens. And so, I had a friend that was thinking about buying a Helium hotspot. And, we were talking about the price action, how the HNT token is down a lot. And he's like, yes, but I really like the idea of participating in a movement that's going to, dethrone kind of telephone companies that are gouging U.S. customers really badly. And with this Solana Seeker, it's like we have 3 options for phones, and if you don't like those, then tough. And so you're by buying a Seeker, arguably you're contributing to just optionality. Like, we can have more than what currently exists in the world. So it's an interesting point as far as the investment case.
Absolutely. And if you look at the networks like Helium, the same people that I was talking to 3 years ago that might have watched it run up to $50, $60 and then run back down to $3 or $2, they're still here. They still love it. They still, and that's what I mean by building the conviction, right? Is like, you always focus less on, the ends, and focus more on the community and what the community is trying to do, because I believe that helps empower the project. And maybe I'm a little naive for thinking that, but I think the more real focus and the more real conviction there is behind what these projects are doing, they are going to be more successful. And that's really the main thing. Is I think you have to believe, in it. You have to drink the Kool-Aid, right? And if you don't, like, like, it's just kind of, I just don't, want to be half-hearted. So like if I invest say I invested I bought a bunch of Moderna stock, right? Back in the day. I'll use this as an example. Would I drop $1 million on Moderna stock if I didn't think they could, do something? And I don't say I don't have $1 million with Moderna, but would I, if I didn't think that they could develop what they say they can develop, right? and those are, and that, I think a lot of that goes right back into the crypto world too. Is don't, I guess if you're trading in meme tokens, no one really gives a shit, right? Like, but if you're trading in something that you think has real value, and you think it could do something good for the world, like your friend who says, yeah, these people are taking, pulling the brick wall of phone companies down from the bottom, right? And then eventually, it's going to be a more sharded system that's going to, allow for smaller players to be in there again. Because if you think about it now, it's like, like how can a small mobile company happen? Like when I was 16, I got my first cellular phone. It was Bluegrass Cellular. I remember all of those. Maybe Bluegrass Cellular is still around. It's in Kentucky. But how many of those small companies are around anymore? If you look at it, like Singular, AT&T. AT&T got acquired, then became AT&T again. Every cellular one was another one of them. They all just OmniPoint. And they all just become, part of this behemoth. And maybe there's a chance if we build this stuff as people, we're not susceptible to having to pay egregious amounts of money to have access to something that shouldn't cost that much. And that's the bottom line. It's like going to Starbucks. We'll use Starbucks again as an example. Is I have a coffee machine that costs like $5,000, and some people might look at me like I'm an asshole for that. But if you take I only drink coffee at home. I don't go out and drink coffee. So if I drink 3 of those at home, in 1 year, I got ROI like twice instead of going to Starbucks. And that's the way that I think everybody should think about it. It's like, why the hell am I going to Starbucks for and paying $5 for brown water? And really, it's I guess you could apply that a little bit to DePIN.
Plus the fact that Starbucks isn't even good, but that's
trash. When you can see the oil just like dripping off the beans, that they were just burnt before they were bagged.
Yeah.
Starbucks.
There's one like right around the corner from me, and I don't get it, man. Because I like to buy my coffee out. I like to treat myself, but it's never to Starbucks. But I'm
going to give a plug to Water Avenue Coffee. Okay, that's where I can buy the world's most bougie coffee from like Portland, Oregon. Have my $5,000 espresso maker, and then still get ROI from it. But yeah, Water Avenue Coffee in Oregon. They're unbelievable. Those guys and Cognoscenti Coffee in Los Angeles. You order either one of those beans, you will be impressed.
Go check them out. But
yes.
one sort of last thing I wanted to touch on with you, Sean, is this is a Solana podcast. We are very Solana centric. You mentioned that the foundation is an LP in the fund. I'm just curious, like from where you sit, you're chain agnostic, so you're not like a Solana based fund. But I report pretty exclusively on Solana. I know there's also these like DePIN chains. So Peak, PEAQ is one example. I have not learned about it. I get pitched on it a lot. I can only look into so many things. I don't know a lot about it. So I guess I just wanted to ask, like, from a chain agnostic point of view, how do you think of Solana and its value to DePIN relative to these specific DePIN layer 1 chains? Like, what's the value prop for Solana?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I'm going to, I'll tread lightly on my answers here just because, Peak, Solana, IOTEX, they're all wonderful partners, with us, and so when I contrast these systems, I try to look at everything from a fair point of view, and I'll look at and I'll say Solana is excellent for being able to launch your token. In the time that it takes to launch a token, create your oracles, and build your system. I think it's a no-brainer, and also with the cost to operate on Solana is a no-brainer. Their ecosystem is great. So like the Solana Foundation, I know Colleen in the foundation. He's a great guy, and I know I see him with the community out there, and working with people even at like events, and you're always going to get that support, right? And I think that's why Solana is so popular. Is one is it starts with how easy it is to launch a token on Solana. Then is it's like how much are the gas fees, and then I think the third part is the speed of rectifying all of this and actually getting a transaction in a slot is going to happen really fast. And then I think the final point of that is the maturity of Solana. And the fact that it's becoming more and more stable over time makes it a huge win. I also think Peak is a great network. Like starting from the focus of from the on DePIN projects themselves and IoT type projects, and having the device, the ability to be able to handle and manage devices on chain. I think it is a great thing. One of the really great things that about Peak that I like is they're trying to enter and work with DePIN projects very, very early, and use their network. And I think the way that they collaborate from a community perspective and the time that they spend there is phenomenal. And I think as Peak matures, it's just going to become a more and more powerful system. And then the good news is it doesn't really matter how many DePIN L1s there are, because at the end of the day, there should be more than one. There should be Peaks, there should be Solanas, and I think the more networks that are here to support DePIN projects, I think the more solidified DePIN becomes as a whole, and that's really the most important thing. And I think it's it's basically like I have fat feet and I can't wear Nikes, right? And I got to wear New Balance, and
the why,
yeah. And so I look at like it's just when you look at the Solanas and you look at the Peaks, it could be something as simple as Nike and New Balance. It's going to fit somebody else's ideology or what they're trying to do in a different way. And because of that, I think over time we'll see these networks build and expand in the way that they do their ecosystem and build through their ecosystem. And yeah, I'm excited because they're both wonderful partners to have. And I think going into the future and watching this growth over the next several years will be quite interesting.
Yeah. So without saying one's better than the other, or whatever, like the Solana sort of priors, I guess, are cheap and fast. Let's make things as cheap and fast as possible and make it really easy for people to build businesses as quickly as possible. So I'm just curious, like Peak, or I guess IoTex is another example. These blockchains for DePIN, what are the, like on a tech level, what are the optimizations that you can make to make it easier to launch a DePIN project other than just being cheap and fast?
Yeah, so I think with Peak, one of the big things, and I haven't developed any, I always say disclaimer, I haven't developed anything in like a year. I haven't developed on Peak, but I believe one of the big tells, that Peak will do differently is the on-chain storage, for devices, right, or storing or having the device data on-chain. Solana can do the same thing, right? But I think Peak is, their APIs will be more geared towards, having devices and having networks of devices, and maybe that's one of the key differences there, right? But that being said, it's an apples and oranges case where Peak well, one, I think Peak is they do a great job because of their ecosystem building, right? And they're going to have projects as part of Peak because of that. The other thing is Peak can also help incentivize other projects. So, for instance, you could be a system that's on Solana, and your token is minted through Solana, but still be part of Peak, and then use those Peak tokens to further incentivize a project. And I think we're going to see that a lot in the future, where you'll have connectivity between multiple L1s, and L1s will be able to support each other in ways where one might be able to incentivize through the other. And I think that's where a lot of cross-chain. One of our other funds, by the way, doing like cross-chain, ecosystem applications happen.
Interesting. Cool. Well, yeah. Thanks for getting into that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely, no problem.
That is all the time that we have for today. But Sean, thank you so much for coming on Lightspeed. It's been a really enlightening episode, and I think DePIN is primed for just an interesting coming few months. There seems to be a lot of new DePINs coming to market. Obviously, Borderless is going to be deploying a lot of capital in that ecosystem. So hope to have you on again in the future, and best of luck running the fund.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Would love to be on again, and had a blast talking to you, man.
Same here. Cheers.
And hopefully we get some opening hip hop.
Yeah, exactly. Take care, my man. This episode would not have been possible without the Sei network. Don't forget, user incentives are coming to Sei from teams like DragonSwap. Make sure to check out Sei today. You can start farming on Sei by visiting dragonswap.app.